Republican Derrick Van Orden represents Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District, and he's one of nearly 80 new faces in the House for the 118th Congress. He talked to C-SPAN about influences on his political beliefs, his military service, and about the lapel pins he wears daily in the House chamber.
Well, the top one is the Naval Special Warfare Device. I earned that as a member of the United States Navy SEAL teams. So I wear that to show folks that I'm a veteran, and that's really, it's a big part of who I am as a person. I think it's important that we have some more military members and veterans in Congress. We bring a very unique perspective, which I think it's time we get a little. I think we have some people here that have skin in the game and understand what decision making, how it really affects the world writ large. And when you are able to put something above yourself, like the mission, and the mission being America, we've proven that as members of the military, and I think we could use a little bit more of that in Washington, D.C. And then the other one is my Congressional Pin, which I'm very happy to wear also.
Will you wear both all the time?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's nice just to be able to, as I said, represent the veterans community here in Congress. Then clearly, wearing the Congressional Pin, it gets you in the door a lot easier.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Tell us about your military service. What prompted you to join?
I joined the military at 18 on a lark, and I wound up working on a tugboat for 2 years. I cleaned toilets and painted, and then I decided to become a medic, which is a corpsman in the United States Navy, and that's where I found out about the SEAL teams, and I actually decided to go be a SEAL on a lark also. And it turns out that was my life's calling. I wound up doing 26 years, over 21 of those as a SEAL. I did 8 deployments of 6 months or longer, 5 of those to combat. I spent about 16 years away from home in training and deployed. I'm very happy to have been able to do that. I lived and worked on 5 of the 7 continents and served in the capacity up to a troop chief, so I was in charge of about 126 people as a senior enlisted leader.
When you say on a lark, explain.
So on a lark, I was out with a friend of mine one night and said, let's join the Marine Corps, and he said, sure, that's a great idea. And I woke up in the morning and I called him and said, I don't want to join the Marine Corps, I want to join the Navy, and he said, yeah. So I drove over and picked him up, and I took him to the recruiter, and that's how I got into the Navy. And then when I was in hospital corpsman school, there was 3 guys that joined the Navy to be SEALs, and that was not something I was familiar with. And they said, hey, you get guns and you drive fast boats and you get a parachute and you scuba dive. And I said, okay, I'll go do that. And so I did.
Tell us about that experience of being a Navy SEAL. I mean, you just sort of alluded to some of the things that you do, but I mean, explain for those that don't understand what it is to be a Navy SEAL every day.
Well, honest to goodness, the vast majority of the time being a SEAL is not that fun. You're cold, you're carrying heavy stuff, people are trying to kill you, you're spending time away from home, but you're part of an incredibly dedicated group of professionals that are focusing on a single mission. So I learned in the SEAL teams how to build real cohesive teams, how to get together with people that may not think the same way about everything, but again, being able to put a goal above your own personal wants and needs, to put aside your physical needs, to put aside your own physical comfort, to put aside your own wants to make sure that you can fulfill a mission. It was an incredibly rewarding experience. I'm very glad to have done it.
And you did 5 combat tours.
Correct.
Where were you?
Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia-Herzegovina, back and forth multiple times.
And what were those experiences like?
Well, they can wear on you a bit. You know, I've had some of my friends killed. From 9/11 on, about 50 of my friends actually, and I'm only 53 years old. So that really brings home the seriousness of what you're doing. I held one of my friend's hands as he died in Afghanistan, listening to his wife crying to a satellite phone into his ear because she knew she'd never see her husband alive again. Again, that brings home the seriousness of what we're doing. Oftentimes people are legislating and they don't understand the long-term or even short-term ramifications of these policy decisions that they're making. We've seen that over and over and over again. And it's time to stop. We can't say that we need to get out of Afghanistan so quickly that we abandon thousands of American citizens and our allies, and then the next day get involved into another conflict where we don't have any type of metrics. When are we actually going to leave? What do we want to see achieved before we stop pouring American resources into these different conflicts?
Did you have connections when the Biden administration decided to withdraw from Afghanistan? Did you
Yes,
know people
I'm actually
there?
one of the guys that flew back to try to help rescue American citizens. So I wound up in the Middle East processing folks that got pulled out of Afghanistan. Yes.
How was it that, or what was the role like that you played there?
it was actually kind of anticlimactic for me. I thought that I was going to wind up on the ground back in Afghanistan, but we ceased all operations when everybody pulled out and things just went totally squirrely. So the rest of my friends pulled out, a total of about 17,000 American citizens and our allies, that the Biden administration just flat out lied. They just lied, saying that there was nobody left in there. And it's unconscionable that the President of the United States would do that sort of stuff. And if you remember, no one has been held accountable for this. There's been zero accountability for the fact that we left, $89 billion worth of equipment and American citizens and our allies. We left them on purpose to terrorists. So that's something that needs to be looked in very seriously by this particular Congress into the executive branch. There needs to be some accountability for these horrific actions that were taken by the Biden administration. They're nearly unforgivable.
Will you be part of that effort?
Well, I am actually on the Agriculture Committee, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and the Veterans Affairs Committee. So I trust my Republican colleagues to look into the actions of the executive branch. I have the utmost confidence that we're going to get to the bottom of a lot of these things that took place, that I'm going to focus on my district, focus on our farmers, and focus on the infrastructure, and something that's very near and dear to my heart, the Veterans Administration, the fact that we have a horrible issue with suicide with the folks, men and women that have served our nation. So those are my areas of focus.
Have you heard from any of your former Navy SEAL buddies now that you've become a member of Congress, and what do they say to you?
Well, I've heard from a lot of them, and there's 5 of us in Congress right now. A lot of them have expressed the fact that they're very happy that I'm here. I'm the first enlisted Navy SEAL ever to be elected to Congress. And it's funny, Eli Crane is also an enlisted guy, but by time zone I beat him. But yeah, they want to see somebody who has actually walked the walk. We have some fantastic former officers here, but the experience of a senior enlisted person and an officer are remarkably different throughout the military. So I'm more of a rubber meets the road kind of guy. And I'm looking forward to bringing those experiences of on the ground, leading our troops in combat, bringing those experiences, how you actually get something from point A to point B in a timely manner here to Congress.
Why are you a Republican? What has shaped your political philosophy in life?
You know what, I was raised, my mother, God rest her soul, she died about 8 years ago, she was very liberal. And so I grew up with these ideas. I grew up with a series of ideas of, I viewed the world from a different lens. And then when I actually got out into the world, I realized a lot of these things don't apply to reality. So if you think about different social systems, I've lived and worked in former Soviet bloc countries, in former communist countries, in former socialist countries. Socialism just does not work. Looks great on paper, but the practical application is disaster. So I became a Republican because I can recognize reality for what it is and try to work towards a common goal, but understand that gravity is real. Rocks are heavy, trees are made of wood.